Shalom, and welcome to Challenging Torah, a project of the Malibu Jewish Center and Synagogue. As we enter the book of Leviticus, called Vayikra in Hebrew, and it begins with God calling to Moses from out of the tent of meeting, that mikdash, that holy place, because all of the book of Exodus, we have now finished the golden calf and the walk to Sinai and the receiving of Torah and perhaps the blowing it with the golden calf. And then God says, make me a sanctuary again, and I will dwell b'tocham. I will dwell within you. Now, in this book, we see how to do that. We see what it means to dwell and to have God dwell within us through the holiness of our actions. Leviticus is often called the Holiness Code, and at the center of the book of Leviticus, chapter Kadoshim, we hear again the word Kadosh, and what does it mean to live a holy life? What does it mean to live a holy life through our actions toward our fellow human beings, through the food that we eat, through the clothes that we wear, through our sexuality, through our parenting, through all of our actions in life? How do we keep this holy? That's the challenge of the book of Leviticus. I am holy, so you be holy, God says. So, how do we do this? And Vayikra begins with a story of sacrifices. And you go, sacrifices? Yuck, really? I get to be holy by giving you an animal? Now wait a minute. I just have the idea that in not 50 years, 10 years, someone's going to say, you cut down trees in order to read? You're kidding. You just read on the computer. You wasted all that resource? Or perhaps in 50 years, we're going to have someone say, you know what? A mere 50 years ago, they ate cattle. They raised cows and used all that energy and all that land and all that resource just to have cow for dinner? It's all about a local consciousness and about a consciousness that we have as to what is acceptable and not. Remember that the Jewish people began in a story where everybody worshiped God through sacrifices. And according to Maimonides, perhaps God did not want sacrifices, but after the golden calf realized, well, it appears that they really do need to do something less abstract. They can't quite keep an image of a God that has no body and that is not accessible in some way. The word sacrifice means korban. Korban means lekarev, to become close. And so the way to become close to God in these opening chapters is through the ritual of sacrifice. And rituals guide our lives, even if we don't really understand all of the complexities of how and why we do them. We don't really understand sacrifice now, but I am sure that there will be people who don't understand how we possibly could have eaten veal. We see changes, and those changes will come about as the Jews, through intention, finally replace these sacrifices with prayer and with consciousness beyond a physical. For now, however, God says to Moses, Vayikra alav mi'ohel moed, says to him, Moses, come here, I'm calling you. And this is one of the great insights of Torah. And it's one of those insights that you only get not by listening, but by reading Torah. Because the word Vayikra, or Vayikra, and he called to him, the word ends with a tiny little aleph at the end. It isn't just small, it's minuscule. And you go, what's that about? And it appears to me that it's about a hologram. That this is the tiny aleph that's imprinted within us, that is God. And just as God says, my name is Yeh Asher Yeh, that's Aleph with a capital Aleph, we are the reflection and the hologram within that's planted inside of us, in our hearts, that little spark, that tiny little Aleph. And in order to access that little Aleph, Moses was the most humble, they say, of all men. You need humility to find the tiny Aleph. In order to be able to hear God call, you need to keep the ego a little quiet. To hear the still small voice, we need to let the ego be turned way down so that the tiny Aleph can respond. That's our challenge. The challenge of this week's Challenging Torah is, what does it take for me to really hear what God wants to say to me? Join us on Saturday morning for a continuation of this Torah study, and dedicate this week perhaps to listening to the still small voice. Shabbat Shalom.